Some men are born into greatness. Nipsey Hussle was not one of them. He was born into Crenshaw, into South Los Angeles, into a neighborhood where poverty pressed in from every direction and gang lines were drawn into the pavement long before he ever took his first steps. And yet, from those same streets, he built an empire that Los Angeles had never seen before and has not seen since. Ermias Joseph Asghedom was born on August 15, 1985. His father had immigrated from Eritrea. His mother was African American. Together, they raised him in the Crenshaw and Hyde Park section of South Los Angeles, a place the world had already written off before he was old enough to understand what that meant. But deep roots do not stop bullets, they do not erase poverty, and they did not protect a 14-year-old boy from a world that had no patience for him. By 14, Ermias had left his mother's house and was living with his grandmother. From that point forward, he was largely raising himself. He said it plainly years later. "I left my house kind of early." When asked how early, his answer still stuns people who hear it. 14, alone, fending for himself in one of the most dangerous zip codes in America. He wanted music. That was always the dream. But music needs studios. Studios cost money, and in Hyde Park, money ran through the streets. Nobody handed him gang life. The streets surrounded him on every side, and neutrality became impossible. He was jumped into the rollin' 60s Crips, not through family tradition, but through survival. He wore it in tattoos. He wrapped it into his verses. He carried it through every police stop that followed him for the rest of his life. But Nipsey Hussle was the exception in a neighborhood full of tragedies. Of his peers in the rollin' 60s at 14 and 15 years old, none survived untouched, and none avoided prison. Not one. He was the one who made it out, and that knowledge shaped everything he built afterward. Through the mid-2000s, his mixtapes built a following the old-fashioned way, hand-to-hand, block-to-block. The Marathon series gave him a name and a philosophy the rap world had never encountered. He famously sold his Crenshaw mixtape for $100 a copy, a move so bold that Jay-Z bought 100 of them in a single purchase. He refused major label deals that swallowed artists whole, holding on to his masters and his independence when every voice around him said he was out of his mind. He understood something most artists never do. Owning your work is owning your future. And then he did something rappers almost never do. He bought the block. In 2017, Nipsey opened the Marathon clothing store at Slauson and Crenshaw, the exact strip mall where he had hustled as a teenager. He was not just opening a business, he was making a statement. He invested in Vector 90, a co-working and STEM space designed to pipeline neighborhood kids into tech careers. He hired locals, including former gang members nobody else would touch. He crossed enemy lines to collaborate with blood-affiliated artists, modeling a unity Los Angeles had rarely witnessed. In 2018, his debut album Victory Lap earned a Grammy nomination for Best Rap Album. The boy from Crenshaw was standing on the biggest stages the music world had to offer, but the streets he loved were not finished with him. March 31, 2019 was a Sunday. Nipsey spent that afternoon doing what he always did, standing in the parking lot of his Marathon store, greeting people, signing autographs, no security wall between himself and his neighborhood. At around 3:15 p.m., a man named Eric Ronald Holder Jr. walked up to the group. Holder was 29. He grew up in the same neighborhood, ran with the same set, and had spent years chasing a music career that never came. What followed lasted roughly 4 minutes. Nipsey raised something with Holder that had been circulating, talked that there was paperwork on him, suggesting he had cooperated with law enforcement. Witnesses were clear. Nipsey's tone was not a threat. It was advice. The conversation ended with handshakes. Nobody sensed danger. Holder left. 10 minutes passed. Then at 3:19 p.m. he came back, armed with 2 handguns, wearing a different shirt. Surveillance cameras caught every second. 3 separate volleys of gunfire. A kick to the head of a dying man. Then a sprint back down the alley. Nipsey was struck 10 to 11 times, mostly in the head and torso. His last words were simply, You got me. Nipsey Hussle was pronounced dead at 3:55 p.m. He was 33 years old. The grief that followed was unlike anything Los Angeles had seen in decades. Murals went up overnight. Rival gangs that had warred for generations organized peace marches in his name. Crips and Bloods walking the same streets without violence, something the city believed was impossible. The intersection outside his store is now officially Nipsey Hussle Square. New music continues to surface. Tributes pour in every March 31st. Eric Ronald Holder Jr. was convicted of first-degree murder on July 6, 2022, and sentenced to 60 years to life in state prison. He was 33 at sentencing, the exact age Nipsey was when he died. Nipsey Hussle left behind an estate valued at roughly $11 million, a clothing store that still stands, a STEM center that still runs, 2 children who carry his values, and a city that still calls his name. He was not given a head start. He was not handed opportunity. He built everything from the same streets that tried to consume him, and then he turned around and tried to save those streets in return. That is what the marathon means, not a race with a finish line, a commitment that never stops, a promise to a neighborhood, to a family, to a future that outlives the man who started it. The marathon continues.